Hello and welcome to Chapter 8 Notes. So in this chapter we're going to talk about pricing decisions. We'll talk about things such as cost plus pricing. We'll talk about things such as pricing special orders. And we'll start off our discussion by talking about the profit maximizing price. Now this first lecture video has a maximum time of 15 minutes. And it will cover only the profit maximizing price and also pricing special orders. Cost plus pricing and customer profitability management and some of the other topics in Chapter 8 will be covered in subsequent Chapter 8 lecture videos. So let's go ahead and start. So the profit maximizing prices, we talk about basic economics, that the quantity demanded is a function of the price that is charged. As a general rule, and this is not always the case, but as a general rule, the higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded, and vice versa. So if we take it that the role of the organization, the for-profit organization, is to maximize shareholder value, then management should set the price that provides the greatest amount of profit, assuming that the goal of the firm is profit maximization. So we talked about determining the profit maximizing price. The hardest part of determining the profit maximizing price is establishing the demand function, which is estimating the elasticity of demand. Basically, it's saying if we charge price of X, Y, Z, how many units do we think we can sell? Actually calculating the profit from a certain price point, especially if you only have one product, is not going to be that bad. It's not that hard. But determining the demand function, estimating the elasticity of demand, and when I say elasticity of demand is what I mean, is how sensitive is quantity demanded to changes in price. If we increase price, how many fewer units would we sell? Or if we decrease the price, how many more units would we sell? So that's what I mean by elasticity of demand. And so estimating how many units we can sell at different price points is going to be really the hardest part in the real world of solving problems like this. Now, in the problems that I give you in class and what we talk about in class is I'm kind of giving you the demand function, but I just want you to be aware that is a difficult thing to do. It relies a lot on judgment. And as we see here, some potential methods that we could use to establish the demand function would probably be the easiest way and potentially the most popular way, would be just ask salespeople to estimate quantities that they could sell at various prices. We could also do some product testing at various prices to see whether or not customers would be interested in purchasing it. Some companies, rather than trying to estimate the demand function, might use cost plus pricing. And that's something that we will talk about more in a subsequent lecture video. Although even with cost plus pricing, you're still going to have some idea of the demand function because you're going to be setting the markup. And we'll talk about that again. I'll talk about that in a subsequent lecture video. For now, let's look at a pretty easy example of determining the profit maximizing price. So if we say, for example, here, the editor of Soccer Monthly magazine, which is my favorite sport, soccer, is considering 3 different alternative prices for a new monthly periodical. Her estimate of price and quantity demanded are, well, if we charge $6.95, we think we'll do 20,000 copies, $5.95, 25,000 copies, $4.95, 32,000 copies. The monthly cost of producing and delivering the magazine consists of $80,000 of fixed costs, and variable costs are $1.50 per issue. So what we can do is we want to know what price gives us the highest profit. Well, so we can see we have a price here of $6.95, we have a price of $5.95, and we have a price of $4.95. So let's go ahead and take a look at these. The easiest thing to do is come over here and say price, and then we can say our variable cost per unit, and we can say our contribution margin per unit, okay? And then what we can say is our total contribution margin, and we can say fixed costs, and then we can say profit. So recall, here's our price, $6.95, and our variable cost per unit is $1.50. To recall, the way we calculate contribution margin is we take price minus variable cost, gives us $5.45 right here, and then we can multiply $5.45 times our quantity, which would give us our total contribution margin of $109,000. We subtract out our fixed costs, which are given to us at $80,000, and then that gives us our profit of $29,000. Okay, and that's $5.45. Sorry, I wrote over that. It's kind of hard to see. Why don't you go ahead and stop the lecture video and go ahead and try to replicate what I did for a price point of $5.95, calculate the profit, and a price of $4.95 and calculate the profit. Just hit pause on the lecture video, calculate it, and then come back and check your work. Okay, so welcome back. Let's go ahead and check our work here. So we can come over here and we can say our price, we can say our variable cost, and we can say our CM, and we can say our total. CM stands for contribution margin. Our total CM, we can say our fixed cost, and we can say our profit. And we can come over here, we can say $5.95, contribution margin per unit is variable cost per unit is $1.50, which means our contribution margin per unit is $4.45. $4.45 times our total demand at that price point, which is $25,000. This is a total CM of $111,250. Subtract out the fixed cost, gives us $80,000, gives us a profit of $31,250. And we can replicate the same thing over here. $4.95. We can say our variable costs of $1.50. We can say our CM over here of $3.45. And then we can say our total CM right here of $110,400. Fixed costs stay the same. They're always $80,000 because they're fixed costs. Remember, fixed costs stay constant in total. Gives us a profit. So again, I'm taking $4.95 minus $1.50 gives me $3.45. $3.45 times the quantity demanded listed on the prior page of 32,000 gives me $110,400. $110,400, which is my CM minus my fixed costs, gives me my profit of $30,400. So just looking at it, recall that at $6.95 our profit was $29,000, our CM was $109,000. At $5.95 our CM is $111,250, profit of $31,250, and then over here at $4.95, $110,400, profit of $30,400. You can see that $5.95 is the maximizing price. It gives us the highest profit. Now, we can go ahead and look at the profit. We could subtract out the fixed costs. I just kind of followed the whole thing through. But it's really not necessary to do that because the fixed costs are the same in every scenario. So if that's the case, we could just look at what gives us the highest contribution margin because you're subtracting the same number. So if this had changed at different price points, then it would really matter. I just went ahead and did the profit all the way out. It's not completely necessary. It's not necessary to solve the problem. I mean, the right answer is $5.95. That gives us the highest contribution margin and also the highest profit. So that's the price that we just should charge, assuming that our estimate of the demand function is correct. That's always my caveat. So if you look over here, that's a pretty simple example. So let's go ahead and look at something a little bit more complicated when we're talking about pricing special orders. Special orders would be a situation where a company gets, it's kind of like what it sounds like. Somebody comes to them and says, we need you to develop XYZ product. And typically, it might be something that you already do. It may be something that's new. But typically, what we're talking about is that we're assuming that the company has the capacity to take on the order. And then maybe, even in some cases, that the person coming to us, the supplier coming to us, may say, I'm not going to pay the normal price point for this. Maybe it's charitable work or something like that, and I can't afford to pay the full price point. Maybe charge a lower price for it's the same product, but we charge a lower price than what we would normally do. Is this still something that we should take on? Okay, so when we look over here, in some cases, it might be beneficial for that company to charge the lower price than what we would normally charge, and also less than its full cost. And when I'm talking about full cost here, I'm talking about variable costs plus the fixed costs. Okay, and this right over here, this point really relates to this point. Now we're saying it might make sense to charge a price lower than the full cost if our fixed costs stay the same. So basically the whole idea would be we're going to incur fixed costs, the same amount of fixed costs, regardless of whether or not we take this special order. And if we incur the same fixed costs, then you might as well consider taking the special order as long as it doesn't disrupt any other business and the incremental revenue exceeds the incremental cost. Okay. So the other thing about the special orders is that we're assuming that this is a short-run decision and that it does not affect our regular business. And that gets into the whole idea that it's not going to, that we're under capacity. We're not going to incur additional fixed costs. And if we do incur additional fixed costs, we have to consider those in our analysis. Okay. We're talking about the relevant decision data for such a decision. We need to think about the incremental revenue, which would be the unit sales price, times the number of units sold. We need to think about any incremental costs, which are typically the direct materials, direct labor, variable overhead, and maybe shipping, and maybe variable selling would be shipping, maybe even some commissions costs. Any additional fixed costs that we would have to incur. I'm not saying, I've said before that the fixed costs would stay the same, but we could have some situations where if we do take the order, maybe we have to get a special piece of machinery, and that would be an additional fixed cost. Okay, so the whole idea that we're really looking at is the cost-benefit decision. If the benefits, the revenues exceed the additional cost from taking the special order, it's something we should do. If the additional cost, the incremental costs, exceed the revenue, the incremental revenue that we would get from doing this order, then we shouldn't do it. Okay. But we do also want to, another thing that we want to consider, any opportunity costs, any benefits that we would have had to forego to fulfill the special order we need to think about. And then, of course, if the price exceeds the fixed costs, we should think about taking that order. So when we look at our example right over here, our company has the capacity of making, 300,000 units a year and sells them for $28 a unit. At present, our company is selling 250,000 units. A foreign distributor has offered to purchase 40,000 units at a price of $20 a unit. The customer will pay all freight costs, and no commissions will be paid on this order. So our variable selling costs will be reduced by 40%. Okay. The sales manager has collected the following data on our operating costs. So we have our materials costs, our labor, variable overhead, variable selling, fixed overhead, fixed admin. So if we take this special order, we don't have to consider this. We don't have to consider this. And the reason that we don't have to consider these two is that because they're fixed, they would be incurred regardless of whether or not we take the order. So if we take the order, we still have fixed overhead. If we take the order, we still have fixed administration. Now, these costs and variable selling, these will be additional costs if we take the order. Because if we don't take the order, we don't have additional materials. We don't have additional labor or variable overhead or variable selling. But if we do take the order, we will have additional materials, labor, variable overhead, variable selling. And it says up here, variable costs will be reduced by 40%. So I'm just going to come over here and multiply this times 0.6. So this can be 2.1. I'll multiply it times 0.6 because it's reduced by 40%. It's just a shortcut way of doing it. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say my incremental revenue is going to be equal to my 40,000 units, okay, my 40,000 units times my $20, which gives me my 800,000. And then I can come over here and say my incremental costs, and I'll say my direct materials, my direct labor, variable overhead, and variable selling. Okay. So we can come over here, we're going to say our 40,000 times the 3 gives me 120. And I'll come over here and say my 40,000 times the 7.5, which gives me 300,000. And I'll say my 40,000 times the 6, which gives me 240. And then finally my 40,000 times my 2.1 per unit, which gives me 84,000. I add up all these. My incremental costs are 744. My incremental revenue is 800,000. My incremental revenue minus my incremental cost gives me an incremental profit equal to 56,000. So yes, I should take the order. Okay, well thank you, and I will start another lecture video, continue with Chapter 8, that continues with this Jamestown problem and then goes into cost plus pricing. Thank you.